Okay, so we're here with Global Change Network USA for our Overcome Procrastination webinar. Welcome to the webinar and welcome to the recording. I'm Peggy Mitchell-Norwood and I'll be the facilitator, presenter. So I'd like to just do an overview of what you can expect during this webinar. I'll be presenting some information and so I'll be presenting some information that you see here on the screen, and I also will take questions for those of you who are on the webinar live. The topics we're going to address today are just an introduction and defining procrastination, understanding motivation and readiness to change, 3 common barriers to change, 8 reasons why we procrastinate, what I call my ABCs of change, 4 strategies to overcome procrastination, and my 21-day challenge. So these will be the topics, and then if we have any other things that come up, I'll address those as well. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself, since you can just hear my voice. I have my picture there. In addition to being ordained through Global Change Network as a teacher, I'm also a clinical psychologist and former psychology professor. And I've worked with hundreds of clients over the years and probably thousands of students over the last 20 years. And simply just by observing their behavior and my own behavior, I've identified some of the most common causes of procrastination, and I've developed some practical strategies to help you to overcome it. So I'd like to share with you what I've learned. While some of my clients readily set therapeutic goals and were receptive to the therapeutic interventions that I offered, some of them accomplished their goals and some of them made the changes that they set out to make. But I had many more clients who did not have a clear goal for why they were even in therapy and what they wanted to get out of it. And therefore, they weren't really as receptive to the therapeutic interventions that I offered. And they very often respond to my interventions with what I refer to as yes, but. So I'd say something really significant, really profound, and the client would respond, yes, but, and then they would proceed to tell me why that didn't apply to them. So they never seemed to really make progress. They never seemed to really make the changes that they said they wanted. And they seem to want me to do everything for them. And these are just my observations. They seem to want me to fix their lives for them, make them better. And so I started keeping a magic wand in my office because it really just seemed like that's what they thought I was going to do, wave this magic wand and their lives would improve. But it really doesn't work that way. And I'm sure that you encounter people like this in your everyday lives as well, even though you may not be a therapist. How many of you do have friends or family who are notorious for procrastinating, notorious for asking for advice, but never taking that advice or making any of the changes in the areas that they constantly complain about? So if you're not raising your hand, maybe that person is you. I'm just joking. But because of my frustration with all the clients that I've been working with who seem to prefer to complain and procrastinate rather than to make the actual changes they said they wanted, I decided I would write a book on the topic. And I wrote a book called Do Something Different for a Change, an insider's guide to what your therapist knows but may not tell you. And it's a part journal, a part guide that offers psychological strategies to help you overcome the barriers that keep us from changing. So I like to say I wrote the book on change, but actually someone else beat me to it. Maybe you've heard of this other book. It's called The Holy Bible. Now, some people say the Bible stands for basic instructions before leaving Earth, and I love that acronym. And even though mine really isn't the original book on change, my book is based on biblical principles for change. And I studied the Bible to see how people in the Bible actually did experience change in their lives. And of course, we know it's with the intervention of God. But one of the main premises of my book is that there are so many people who say they want change in their lives, but they're not willing to make changes in their lives. We say we want something different, but we're not always willing to do something different. Why? Simply because change is hard, change is scary, and change comes at a cost. And even the Apostle Paul struggled with this pattern of wanting change. In Romans 7, beginning in verse 15, the Apostle Paul says, I do not understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate, I do. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. As it is no longer I myself who do it, but it is sin living in me. I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do. This I keep on doing. Now if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it is sin living in me that does it. So I find this law at work. Although I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For in my inner being, I delight in God's law. But I see another law at work in me, waging war against the law of my mind and making me a prisoner of the law of sin at work within me. What a wretched man I am. So in addition to change being hard and scary and it comes at a cost, we know that the real problem is that we have a sin nature. It's just flesh. And as Pastor Kay always says, we cannot improve upon the flesh. We must kill it. So we're going to explore these three barriers that I've mentioned here that are on the screen in just a moment. But first, let me reveal now, as my book's subtitle promises, the most important secret that your therapist knows but may not tell you. You ready for that secret? The secret is, drum roll please, there is no secret. I'm sorry to break that news to you. However, if you want something different, you must do something different, and it really is just that simple. You must recognize that the things you're doing now are the very things that cause you to procrastinate and keep you from having the change that you desire. You may need information, you may need a coach, you may need a therapist like myself, but the bottom line is if you want something different, you must do something different. Now, this is true not just for procrastination, but it's true for any of the changes that you'd like to make. And this webinar will help you to overcome these barriers. So let's get started. Let's first start with a definition of procrastination, and I'll find a picture for this later. So that's just a picture and a joke about the actual definition of procrastination. Procrastination simply just means putting off doing something that should be done and putting it off intentionally and habitually. So we put things off and we do it on purpose. We're very aware of it when we do it, and it has become a habit. So that's the key part here. Everyone procrastinates from time to time, but when it becomes a habit, procrastination, I like to call it the great thief of productivity and the enemy of change. When you're putting things off and you're doing it on purpose and you've made a habit or a lifestyle of it, you are really helping Satan do his job. He comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And 1 Peter 5 says, your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Our dreams, our goals, and our purpose are all destroyed and stolen by procrastination. So you may think I'm being dramatic or exaggerating, but when procrastination becomes a lifestyle, it's fueled by a spirit of passivity, and you will not be able to do what God has created you to do. God is a God of timing, and sometimes our window of opportunity or our season of our harvest can be very narrow. And procrastination will always cause you to miss that window or that season to do for God what he wants you to do. Again, it's been my experience that we all procrastinate from time to time. Some of us just more than others, or in certain situations more than others. So to understand and overcome procrastination, it's helpful to understand the concept of motivation. So motivation is simply defined as the reasons that we have for acting or behaving in a particular way. And I want to encourage you to explore your motivations, and we'll do that here during this webinar. Your motivation will elucidate the causes of procrastination by answering this question here. Why aren't I motivated? Why am I not motivated for this particular task? Why am I putting it off? If you are a procrastinator in a particular area of your life, you're not motivated in that area. But psychology shows us that the more valuable question is not why aren't I motivated, but rather for what am I motivated? And one way we can overcome the barriers to change is to study and identify what's happening when we are able to do the things we need to do without intentionally and habitually putting them off. So we all need to do a better job of living a life characterized by self-reflection and self-awareness. And many of us are blind to our own motivations, patterns, habits, and obstacles. We are living on autopilot. So I want to encourage you to become a student of God and become a student of His Word, and then become a student of yourself. Study yourself, know your own weaknesses, and know your character flaws. And counseling can help you with that. Taking classes at CVTS can help you with that. Things like rewriting the heart and embracing the Father's heart, search for significance. Classes like that can really help you to better understand where you're struggling. Now, you also become a student of yourself simply by inviting God to search you and know you and test your anxious thoughts. Like Psalm 131 says in verse 1, "O Lord, you've searched me and you know me." And verse 23 says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." So become more aware of the times when you don't procrastinate. There are so many tasks that we do every day where we have no problem starting and completing them. So if we can understand what motivates us, we can overcome procrastination. So let me ask you this. What motivates you? And if you have a piece of paper in front of you, just jot it down. And this may be something that you can share with a counselor if you do decide to pursue that route. Think of a time when you were in what I call the sweet spot. For example, when things flowed effortlessly and you couldn't wait to start or accomplish a task. You stayed up all night working on it, and you had to even make yourself go to bed. That would be an example of your sweet spot. For me, it's, for example, writing a presentation, developing a presentation like this one. I love coming up with a topic that meets a need and then breaking it down into easy to understand concepts and terms, and then putting it together in an engaging, visual way and clearly communicating what I want to share practically and simply. So maybe you're motivated by curiosity, maybe competition, achievement, love, money, power. And, not all these things are necessarily negative. We all want to be powerful through God and for God. And competition is a good thing when it's inspiring you to do better. You're trying to improve and grow. So some of these words may have a negative connotation, but look for the godly motivation. Maybe it's social connection, helping others, mastery, autonomy, purpose. Again, if you want to overcome procrastination, it will be critically important for you to figure out what motivates you. Again, working with a counselor, a Pastor K, or any of the other counselors at the church, or someone outside of the church like myself. I happen to be a clinical psychologist and an ordained minister, so I offer prayer-based counseling and exploration. So let someone help you to identify and leverage what motivates you. But the simplest thing to do is inquire of the Lord and see what He shows you. So in addition to identifying your motives, it's also important to determine if you actually really are ready to change. And that may seem like a silly question, are you ready to change? But the reality of it is some of us simply are not ready to change, and therefore will never overcome procrastination. So procrastination is the roadblock that prevents us from doing something we actually may really not want to do. And so you may not be ready to change, you may not be ready to procrastinate, if that thing that's on the other side is something that you're not really excited about. So if that's the case for you, you have to embrace your procrastination. It can speak to you, it can reveal to you, it can expose what it is that you love and don't love. Perhaps your procrastination is telling you that it's time to move on to something else. Granted, sometimes you can't just up and leave a job or abandon certain relationships or a necessary task, but the nature of your procrastination provides information about what motivates you. So perhaps it's time to start investigating and or pursuing your passions. I have worked with many people in counseling sessions who discovered that they were stuck because they were pursuing a certain course of action, a relationship, or a career out of obligation rather than passion. So to help you in this area, I developed a little assessment here, a pretty quick assessment to quantify your readiness for change. I call it my change quotient, or CQ test. And the CQ test is useful for prompting you to reflect on how open and willing you are to change. So if you have a QR code reader on your smartphone, you can scan the code on the screen and it will take you to the test. But if not, just go to my website, www.drpegonline.com, and click on the CQ test on the home page, and it's that green box with the butterfly. And what's great about this test is it's going to uncover passivity, if there's passivity there. I once heard a quote by a speaker at a conference that relates to the role of passivity in procrastination and failure to change. And it goes like this: people who want milk should not seat themselves on a stool in the middle of a field and expect a cow to back up over their bucket. I have a variation on this quote. People who want change in their lives should not seat themselves in the middle of a therapist's office and expect their therapist to change their lives for them. So being passive means to accept or allow what happens or what others do without an active response or any resistance. And passivity points to a lack of readiness to change. And if you're not ready to change, you are prone to procrastination. So again, are you really ready to change? Be honest with yourself. Not everyone is ready for the deep, great things of God. Not everyone, as the Bible says, is ready for solid food. And that's okay. God will work with you where you are, but you again have to inquire of the Lord and invite Him to search your heart. Procrastination could be the very thing holding you back from what God has for you. So what gets in the way of being ready? Why don't most people do what they know they ought to do? Let's take a look again at the 3 common barriers to change that I mentioned a moment ago. Change is hard, change is scary, and change comes at a cost. You know, if it were easy, you would have already done it. If you weren't afraid, you would have already done it. If you had nothing to lose, you would have already done it. And so these 3 barriers, in most cases, will add up to procrastination. So let's take them one at a time. What makes change so hard? Well, in my experience, change requires taking responsibility, and it necessitates hard work. No one can do it for you, and this might be one of the biggest reasons for procrastination, when it just seems like it's so hard, it's so big, and you're the only one who can do it, we might put it off. Change also takes time, and it requires patience. You didn't get to where you are overnight. You're not going to fix things overnight. And change sometimes hurts. We've got to face our failures and our shame. We've got to face the emotions that get stirred up for us. And when things get too hard, you're prone to procrastinate. Change is also scary. What changes have you been too afraid to make? What have you been too afraid to start or to do, or maybe even too afraid to stop doing? Procrastination could be due to fear. Again, in my experience, some of the common causes of fear are fear of the unknown, fear of the unfamiliar, fear of failure or even failure of success, and then getting into what if thinking that fuels all of it. What if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? What if I lose everything? What if they laugh? What if I can't handle it? Change is scary, and that might be why you procrastinate. Just you don't want to feel those uncomfortable feelings. And lastly, change also comes at a cost. What would you have to give up to have the change that you desire? What would you have to sacrifice? And what would you have to lose? Again, you might be procrastinating because you're just not ready to give up those things. Some of the things you might have to give up might include your time, your comfort zone, different relationships. You might have to give up resources, including money, or even just a sense of control. So those are the three main barriers to change, and procrastination might be one of your solutions to avoiding the difficult work of change. But when you procrastinate, there's going to be also very specific reasons. So again, reflect on your own experience of procrastination. Under what circumstances do you tend to procrastinate? What tasks do you tend to put off? And that'll help you understand the specific reasons why you procrastinate. But I'd like to share with you 8 different reasons in my experience that people tend to procrastinate. One is just pretty obvious. You just don't like some of the things that you have to do. Maybe there's a lack of variety in the task, or it's very boring, or whatever it might be, you just don't like it. For me, I don't like doing dishes. I don't like doing laundry. And I know some people who do enjoy those things because they feel it's meditative and they like the results. They like seeing everything being clean and folded and put away. But I just don't like those tasks, and so I tend to procrastinate. Another really important reason why people procrastinate is simply just feeling overwhelmed. Sometimes you just have a lot on your plate. Think about the last time you procrastinated around your taxes. That's a huge one. It's just a lot. You might be really overwhelmed by it. Some people also procrastinate because of the different negative feelings that the task may stir up for them. Maybe it makes them sad. Maybe they're anxious because they're afraid they might fail, or even anxious because they're afraid of success, that it may be overwhelming of the new places and the new realms they'll have to operate in if they're successful. Maybe there's feelings of shame. So any number of negative feelings that you'd rather avoid will cause you to procrastinate. Perfectionism, which is also related often to fear of failure. People who are perfectionistic are afraid of the consequences if they don't do it well, so they want to do it perfectly. And in wanting it to be perfect, there's a part of them that knows that that's an unattainable goal. And so they put it off and put it off because they don't want to acknowledge that it won't be perfect. Related to that might be performance anxiety as well. Poor time management might be another reason why we procrastinate. Just not being able to get everything accomplished in the amount of time that you have, making a schedule, etc. Lack of autonomy, just not being able to call the shots yourself could cause you to become passive aggressive and just put it off, especially if you find yourself procrastinating at work or with a spouse, or if you're a child who has to answer to a parent. You might procrastinate because it's the only way that you can assert your own autonomy, your sense of being yourself. And then finally, negative beliefs about your ability or your self-worth. And we've kind of touched on these already when we look at negative feelings and perfectionism. You might procrastinate to avoid confirming the fears and beliefs that you have about your inability. Or maybe you sabotage yourself if you don't believe that you deserve better. So when you begin to answer the questions I'm posing to you so far, what motivates you? Are you ready? What are the barriers that keep you stuck? You can begin to unlock the hold that procrastination has on you and the factors in your life that keep you from moving forward. So it really is like a combination lock. What are the different variables? What are the different factors that are involved in your particular circumstances that are keeping you stuck? So to help you to overcome these specific reasons that you have identified, I'd like to first present to you 3 general strategies to help you to overcome procrastination and experience any kind of change in your life. I call these my ABCs of change. And in my ABCs of change, you're looking at 3 areas. A is for attention. You have to change your focus. B is for beliefs. You have to change what you think. And C is for choices. You have to change what you do. So let's look at each of these in more detail. Okay, A is for attention. If you want to overcome procrastination, you're going to have to change your focus away from what you don't want and instead focus on what you do want, on the part of the task or the outcome that captures your passions, that you enjoy, or that's what you like. Psalm 37, verse 4 says to delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. So focus on the part that you're good at or that's easy or fun. Focus on the part that you know that God is excited about or the part that you know that God is calling you to do. You can even focus on what you'll gain if you complete the task. What are the outcomes? You know, it's ironic and unfortunate that we often procrastinate around the very things we need to do to have the things we say we want. Let me say that again. We procrastinate around the very things that we need to do to have the things we say we want. So again, that sounds like the enemy to me, that he's going to manipulate your emotions and your thoughts to keep you from doing what God wants you to do, having what God has for you. So keep your attention focused on where you're going or on where you want to go, not on where you don't want to go. Let me give you an example of how important your focus is. I'm training for my 8th sprint triathlon, and it's a half-mile swim in open water and an 11-mile bike ride and a 3.1-mile run. Now, before I did my first triathlon, I had to learn how to swim, and they're in open water, and so for a beginning swimmer like myself, it can be very intimidating. People swim into you from behind, they kick you in the face, they bump into you, they splash you. So in my first triathlon in open water, I was so busy focusing on not swimming into the crowds of other competitors and on not getting kicked and bumped that I missed the buoy where I was supposed to turn around and head back to the pier. I actually had to be redirected by the lifeguards. They were blowing their whistles and waving because I was just going off in the wrong direction. So focusing on where I didn't want to go and what I didn't want to have happen actually caused me to miss where I was supposed to be going. And I think this is such a great example and illustration that applies to procrastination as well. We can be so busy focusing on the part of a task that's not appealing to us that we miss doing the very things that will move us where we want to go. Philippians 4, starting in verse 8 says, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." So let's take a look at B. B is for beliefs. And if you've ever studied psychology, you're aware of the classic cognitive distortions, such as making mountains out of molehills, all or nothing thinking. Maybe you've heard of those types of things. But we can engage in what psychologists call stinking thinking, or just simply erroneous beliefs, or as Pastor Kay says, lie-based thinking. They're just beliefs that just aren't accurate. They're just not true, and they contribute to procrastination, especially when those beliefs are about ourselves, our environment, and the future. Aaron Beck actually calls these the depressive triad because erroneous beliefs about ourselves, environment, and our future make us more vulnerable to even becoming depressed, let alone procrastinating. So to overcome procrastination and make the changes we want, we must be mindful of our erroneous, distorted beliefs and replace them with what's actually true. It's important to realize that sometimes what we believe is true, but if our beliefs don't motivate us to do what we need to do, even when they're true, we need to redirect our attention to the beliefs that will motivate us. Okay, so sometimes what we're believing is true, but it's just not helpful. It's not productive. So redirect your attention to the beliefs that motivate us. In a nutshell, we feel what we think and we do what we feel. So every action starts with a thought and then a feeling, and therefore we've got to renew our minds. We have to change what we believe about ourselves, our environment, and our future so we can overcome procrastination and transform our lives. Romans 12, beginning in verse 2, says, "Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." I love the New Living Translation. It says, "Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think." I love that. So let's look now at C. C is for choices. Ultimately, we have to change what we do. If we change our focus and our beliefs, but we still do the same old things, we will procrastinate and never accomplish what we want. But if we'll change our focus, change our beliefs, and then be intentional and change our actions accordingly, then we will be moving in a new direction. James 1 verse 22 says, "Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says." Also in James 2 verse 17, James says, "In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead." Now faith is what we believe. It's the substance of things hoped for. But then James is saying we can have faith, we can renew our minds, we can have a belief, we can redirect our focus, but bottom line, ultimately we still have to take action. Otherwise, all of that is dead. So to help you move forward in your choices, it's helpful to ask yourself 3 simple questions. What do I need to do now? What do I need to do next? And what do I need to do that's new? So again, self-reflection. What's motivating me? Where am I getting stuck? What am I believing? What am I doing? What do I need to do now? And again, you may need some help with that. You may need to talk to a counselor like myself or someone at the church to help you kind of be more aware of what's going on now. What are the consequences of my choices? How is this thing related to that thing? Then you need to ask yourself, what do I need to do next? And we'll talk more about this at the end of the webinar. What's that next small step that you need to do to move you in the direction that you want to go? And then finally, what do I need to do that's new? You know, where you are is directly related to the things you've done in the past. So if you want to be somewhere other than where you are, you've got to do something other than what you've done. You know, this stuff is really not rocket science. Most of us already know that what we're doing is not working, but our attention and our beliefs can be below our conscious awareness, and therefore it takes intentional effort, repeatedly, daily, day by day, and then maybe even somebody else pointing it out to us, trying to help us. Okay, so those are my ABCs of change. They work for anything, not just procrastination. You can read more about those ABCs in my book, and I'll give you that ordering information at the end of the webinar if you're interested. So let's take a look at 4 practical strategies to overcome procrastination. The ABCs are in general, and you can use those around issues of procrastination. And then here are 4 additional specific strategies that you can use to overcome procrastination. Strategy number 1, I call divide and conquer. And this is a very effective and simple strategy. If you're procrastinating, especially because you feel overwhelmed, for example, by a large project, you can break that project into manageable units or chunks. The more overwhelmed you feel, the smaller the chunks should be. So for example, if you have a large cleanup project in your office or a ton of yard work that you have to get done, you can divide the area into manageable sized zones or chunks. Then work on each chunk or zone in small increments. Don't do too many things all at once for too long a period of time, otherwise you'll get overwhelmed again. Remember, that's probably why you were procrastinating to begin with, and this strategy is helping you to chip away at that feeling of overwhelm. So if you start feeling overwhelmed, take a break and finish that chunk later. Another way to divide and conquer is to use the buddy system. Ask a friend to help you. Each of you will do a small part of the task or project. Ecclesiastes 4, beginning in verse 9, says, "Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of three strands is not equally broken." Now, remember, looking at why you procrastinate is really important. Your procrastination can speak to you, can reveal to you, can expose some areas in your life that God wants you to address. It's possible that when you look at this divide and conquer strategy and creating a buddy system, you may discover you really don't have anyone you feel you can ask for help. So in that way, your procrastination is exposing an area where Satan maybe has isolated you and has you feeling depressed and lonely because you don't have anyone who can help you when you're overwhelmed. So that's an area to work on. Get yourself connected, join a small group, start volunteering, get involved in hobbies, go to the rec center for classes so you can meet other people who have similar interests and values. So that's strategy number one. Let's take a look at strategy number two. Reward yourself. This is a great strategy because we know as psychologists that positive reinforcement works. After you complete each chunk or zone, give yourself a small reward. Get up and stretch, allow yourself to make a quick phone call, eat a cookie, watch a little TV, whatever would be an appropriate reward for the chunk or the zone that you've completed. Now, what could be some small rewards that you could use? Think about them and jot them down. Everybody's different, and everybody enjoys different things as their reward. Let's take a look at number 3. Schedule time. Whether you're breaking tasks into small chunks or doing everything all at once, it's helpful to schedule a time to complete each chunk or the entire task. Start by working backwards. When is it due? How many chunks do you have? How long will each chunk take? When we schedule time, we don't actually manage time. Time marches on regardless of how we handle or manage it. Everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. What we actually manage are tasks within time frames. So to help overcome procrastination, you need to better manage your tasks. You can make a to-do list, prioritize each task, and then execute it on a schedule. But you got to manage those tasks better according to the appropriate time frame. For bigger or more complex tasks, it will be important to not only chunk, but to scaffold the task as well. Scaffolding involves scheduling time to complete each chunk in a correct sequence. Instead of randomly chunking, as we saw with the divide and conquer strategy, we can intentionally put chunks in the proper sequence, where one chunk is a prerequisite for the completion of the next chunk. We can also delay rewards until a whole sequence is executed in the correct order. One problem that you may encounter, and that a lot of people encounter, is we often don't allot enough time for each task. This is especially common among students. I used to assign comprehensive class projects that were due at the end of the semester. And students learned about these projects on the very first day of class, and they had 15 weeks to complete the project. The project is designed to require a great deal of time, and yet the students would wait until 2 days before it was due to start. It's impossible to do a 15-week project and do it well 2 days before it's due. I used to tell my students, unless your project is a case study on procrastination and you're your subject, don't wait until the last minute. So be sure to accurately estimate the amount of time something will take you. And sometimes this can only be done by actually starting the task and seeing how long any given chunk will take, and then plan from there. Strategy number 4, manage your environment. You're also going to need to refocus your attention away from all of the different distractions. There's so many stimuli in our environment today, and if we're distracted by mindless, counterproductive, inefficient, ineffective activities, people and events will not only be able to complete the tasks we need to complete to have the change we say we want. Let me say that again. We will not be able to complete the tasks we need to complete to have the change we say we want when we are constantly distracted. Distractions are merely excuses to put off doing what we should be doing, and therefore distractions should be eliminated or minimized at all costs. If procrastination is the thief of productivity, then distractions are the thief's flashlight, mask, and lockpicks. You can also be distracted by being busy, and not necessarily distracted by people around you and, all of the, interruptions with phone calls and texts and whatnot. But you can just be so busy over-committing yourself, over-scheduling yourself, that then you procrastinate for the things you actually say you want to do. I once heard an acronym for busy, being under Satan's yoke. And that was really eye-opening. We can even feel like we're busy for God. But take a look at the things you're really busy with. Are they moving you in the direction that you've been called to move in? Are all the things that you're busy with helping everybody else, but you are still stuck? You are not thriving. You really want to seek the Lord on that so that you can have a balance. Now think about what some of your favorite distractions are when you know that you're procrastinating, because remember, back to the definition of procrastination, it's intentionally putting off things that you need to do. So some of us have some distractions that we go to. They're our fallback, our default go-to distractions. For example, if you do a lot of computer work for your job, you may need to turn off the email alerts on your computer or close your internet browser so you won't be tempted to check game scores or the latest posts on your Facebook. So you may already know that if you're doing computer work and you have a computer deadline for a project, you may need to turn off your email, because you know that email is a good distraction because it's legitimate. These emails do need to be responded to after all. People are, contacting you, and they will need to be returned eventually. But you can be strategic about when you plan to return those emails. Remember, you're managing your tasks according to time frames. So you may need to set up a time frame just for email so that you can't use it as a strategy to procrastinate from the actual project that needs to be done. I could do a whole webinar just on Facebook alone. Facebook, besides being a distraction, and I saw someone posted on Facebook, yes, I am on Facebook. It's like what people say, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Facebook in and of itself is not bad or evil, it's how we use it. But I did see on Facebook someone had posted on Facebook, 2 minutes turns into 3 hours. And that is so true. You go on Facebook to post one little thing or check one little response to a message, and 3 hours later, there you are. And maybe you don't just stay on Facebook, but 3 hours later, you've been all over the internet browsing or shopping or reading news articles or what have you. Again, not that any of those things are necessarily bad in and of themselves, but if you're using them as a distraction to procrastinate from the more important task that you've prioritized, that's when it's a problem. Well, another thing that you can do with distractions is, for example, if you get a lot of calls or texts, you may need to shut off your phone or put it out of sight altogether while you're working on a project that may be a priority or have a deadline. In your office, if you're constantly interrupted by coworkers or clients, you may need to close your door and put up a do not disturb sign if your company culture would allow such a thing. I know a man who used to work in a cubicle that actually didn't have a door, so he would hang a sign when he really needed some uninterrupted time. He would hang a sign that said, "Pretend this is a door and that it's closed." So sometimes even a closed door won't protect you. For example, while I've been doing this webinar, people have knocked at the door, come and just open the door, been in and out of this office because there is no sign on my door that says, "Please do not disturb." So that's something to consider, putting a do not disturb sign up when you know you're procrastinating by taking people's visits and answering their questions. You might even consider moving your office out of the flow of traffic and work on a laptop in a conference room that's not near your office. Or if you work from home, you'll have to manage distractions in your environment. For example, are the kids a distraction? The TV or that pile of laundry? Well, as I mentioned, a sink full of dirty dishes and laundry would never be a distraction for me because those are things I'm actually trying to procrastinate not to do. So these are some very basic but effective strategies. Divide and conquer, getting a buddy system, managing your time, managing your environment, etc. They're effective strategies if you'll actually implement them. These strategies don't work and won't work if you don't work them. Now, that may seem like an obvious statement, but how many self-help books have you read? How many webinars have you attended on topics that were important to you? You got lots of great advice and strategies, techniques, and yet you still didn't implement them. So at some point, if you're going to overcome procrastination, you are eventually going to need to just do it. Nike was right. You might be sick and tired of procrastinating, but ask yourself honestly, are you sick and tired enough? Are you really ready for change? Because until you get sick and tired enough, until you're really ready, you're not going to make any changes. But why wait until you can't take it anymore? That's what I want to encourage you. Sometimes we wait until our life falls apart. We wait until we are sick and tired. We wait until we just can't take it and we're about to lose our minds. But why wait? You're on this webinar right now. God has made a divine appointment for you to have some good practical information. Why not identify the things that you are motivated for and leverage those? Along the lines of just do it, you could pretend you did want to do whatever it is you are avoiding. Ask yourself, what if I actually wanted to do this? What if I actually couldn't wait to get this thing done that I had previously been procrastinating around? What would I do first? If you weren't afraid, if it weren't too hard, if you had nothing to lose, what would you do? What one small step would you take if you were really ready to start? Really ready to change. And then just do that one small thing. Pray about it. Lord, I'm ready. Search my heart. Show me what's getting in my way. I give it up. I surrender it to you. What would you have me to do first? What's that first small step? Remember the 3 N's, now, next, and new? Lord, what do you want me to do now? What do you want me to do next? What do you want me to do new? That's small enough that I can do it. It helps to imagine ourselves happily, excitedly doing something just to get over that initial inertia and passivity and the paralysis of fear. So visualize yourself taking that first small step. Better yet, visualize yourself taking it to completion, successfully completing that thing finally that you had been putting off for so long. Now, I'm sure you've heard psychologists say that it takes 21 days to establish a new habit or break an old one. But one thing they never tell you is exactly what to do over the course of those 21 days to experience change. To make it plain, I've developed what I've called my 21-day challenge. In order to develop a new habit and stimulate initiative when you feel like procrastinating, follow these guidelines. Pick one small thing that will move you one step closer to a bigger goal. Focus on what you will start doing rather than on what you will stop doing. This is really important. A lot of people say, I'm going to stop procrastinating. I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to stop eating too many sweets. And that's all well and good, but it gives you absolutely no guidance, no direction on what you will be doing instead. So if you're not procrastinating, what will you be doing? What's that one small thing that if you stuck with this, if you kept it going, would move you one step closer to the thing that you're trying to accomplish? That's what you're going to focus on, not all the things that get in the way. Remember my lesson about swimming. Focus on where you do want to go rather than on what you don't want to have happen. And then do this one small thing for 21 days. Now, there's no magic in the 21 days. It could be 30 days. It could be 40 days. We see 40 as a unit of time a lot in the Bible. So you could certainly double it and make it 40 days. But at a minimum, at least for 3 weeks, you're building a habit. That's the significance of that number. It's not so much exactly how many days, but that it's a significant amount of time where you're repeating this small step over and over and over again to make it a habit. Now, be realistic when you select this small step. Make sure that it is small enough and doable enough that you can sustain it for 21 days. Make sure you can be consistent with it. So if you fail, that just means you picked something that was overly ambitious. You took too big a step. So if you find that you're not able to stay consistent with it, pick something a little smaller, a little more manageable. And I'd like to suggest I'm doing this webinar live on a Saturday. Gives you tomorrow to really think about it and pray about it and let the Lord show you what you should be focusing on. But I recommend start on Monday. Even if you're not watching this live on a Saturday, Monday's always a good day to start fresh. People say it's, the official start over day. So whether you wait till Monday or start tomorrow, I do suggest you start within the next week. Pray about it, pick that one small thing that you're going to do and focus on for 21 days or more. Make it realistic, small enough, doable enough that you can be consistent with it, to stick with it every day. And then start sooner rather than later. Now, I'd love to help you in this 21-day challenge, and I've got a lot of resources I can share with you that will help you move in this direction. I've mentioned my book, Do Something Different for a Change, An Insider's Guide to What Your Therapist Knows But May Not Tell You. And I've also just recently written a workbook that's specifically for people who are transitioning to work. So people who've been unemployed, maybe they were fired or laid off or quit their job. I recently quit my teaching job to start a new career. It's very scary. There are a lot of challenges. Maybe someone who's coming off of public assistance, maybe a new professional just coming out of college, or a high school graduate trying to figure out what they want to do in terms of their work and their livelihood and finding their passion. You might find that this would be a very valuable resource for you. Also new coming this summer, I have a new book out called Doggy Tales, Lessons on Life, Love, and Loss I Learned from My Dog, that I'd like to make you aware of as a possible inspiration for you as you're making these changes and overcoming procrastination. So I'm offering 10% off through the end of June. If you're watching this on a recording, this is a time-sensitive offer through end of June. When you go to my website, drpegonline.com, click on books, or if you have a smartphone and you can scan that code, you can go right in on your phone. And then for the coupon code in the checkout, in the shopping cart, put procrastination-webinar for your discount. But what I want to encourage you with as we come to a close here is keep in mind that all of the information I've shared in this series is not enough. In graduate school, we learned, quote, insight is necessary, but not sufficient for change. You can know all of this stuff and still not do any of it. So I leave you with this final question: what will you do? And I hope that you will overcome procrastination and do something different for change. I just want to leave you with a scripture from James 1, verse 12. I love this scripture. And I'm incorporating it in another book that I'm working on right now. It's James 1, verse 12. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. So as we come to a close here with this webinar, I just pray that this information was helpful for you. I pray that you would become a doer and not just a hearer of this word. I pray that you would persevere, and that when you've stood the test, you will receive the crown of life that God has promised for you because you do love him. Thank you very much. I invite you to contact me, reach out to me on my website, email, or my telephone, and would love to chat with you about how you're applying these strategies. So do feel free to reach out to me. I just thank you for tuning in to this webinar, and I pray that God would bless you.